back and bigger than ever. It's the Unofficial 40 from SoonerScoop.com. Now, here's the entire Sooner Scoop crew. Carey, Josh, Eddie, and
George.
All right, we are back. It is the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on SoonerScoop.com. And there, the volume works this week when Joe Castiglione's not in studio. George, welcome back after a week off of well-deserved vacation, may I say.
I just want to be clear that I've gone on one vacation this year. I've gone on one vacation.
This is you should
it was for like 4 days.
This has replaced the Tinder's conversation with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's every YouTube comment, every message on the board, people tweeting at me, PTO, Oya. Like, I'm like, what is this? I've gone on one vacation. Yes, Sooner Scoop does take vacations.
It seems like you're talking to the wrong person right now. The person
I listened to the
you should
pod
be talking
last week.
to is to the left of me. People can't see it. But.
I listened to the pod last week. I was thrown under the bus a little bit.
Okay.
How was your first trip?
What do you mean by that?
I thought you were doing drugs. I thought you were microdosing.
No comment.
Oh.
God, what a way to start the pod when I wanted to talk about the family that drove all the way from Orlando to come and see us this week.
Yeah, it's called trafficking.
I believe it was their own kids, all right? They looked a lot like the parents.
No, I'm kidding. I heard that. We weren't here. George and I were over at the press conference.
It was right at the start. Yeah, we had a deluge of visitors, which I love. But
there was a lot of people in town on Monday.
And I wasn't able to get over to the press conference, which I was happy to find out afterwards that it was a big nothing burger, and I watched it last night on the Sooner Scoop editorial page. And now we have a visitor, another visitor.
Come in.
Hello, come back.
We're right here.
You want to come on the podcast?
Yeah.
You run a tattoo.
Hello, people.
What's up?
And who are you?
I'm Alicia. I see you on the TV right there. So are you on the show right now?
Yeah. Yes. It's all right. You're on it now.
Well, I don't even need a tattoo, but I did just get one, so I need like
Oh my goodness.
some ointment or something. I just need to know how to take care of it. Because he didn't really give me proper instructions. He didn't even answer the phone.
That's right.
Josh, you have a leg tat.
Do you have any advice?
What is her?
I do.
What's the proper care? What does she need to do?
Just need some BACITRACIN. Got to put it on there
BACITRACIN.
for about 2 weeks.
Put it on there for 2 weeks, he says.
Do I need to
Yep.
keep it wrapped?
Like maybe morning and
Does she
afternoon.
keep it wrapped?
Like with that film you put on it? In there?
No, let it breathe.
Let
You
it
want
breathe.
to
He says
heal.
let it breathe. So just put it on.
Let it breathe.
Let it breathe for 2 weeks.
Let it breathe for 2 weeks. And just put a thin layer of something on there?
Yep. Yeah, it doesn't have to be
Yes.
crazy.
Yes.
Just enough
So
to
a
kind
thin
of.
layer.
It's just letting the wound
I need to
heal.
look up tattoo ointments at Walmart and pick one of the best ones.
BACITRACIN. I don't.
But do they-
Yep. She can find it anywhere. Walgreens.
find it anywhere.
It's all over the
Walgreens.
place.
Maybe go Siri. Where do I find BACITRACIN?
Okay, let me cut it up. What do y'all do?
Siri will take you.
Political analyst. We're talking about the upcoming presidential debate.
Okay, cool.
No, I'm kidding. We cover OU.
We just cover OU sports. Yeah.
Okay. What's that stuff called again?
BACITRACIN.
BACITRACIN. We don't know if we're going to edit this out yet or not.
We're only
Interrupted the show.
one tattoo.
Is it the first tattoo? It must be the first tattoo.
No, I already have one right here.
Gotta be.
And then I got one right.
Oh, she's got 2 already. Okay.
Yeah, and then I got this little foot piece. Never again. I should have prepared myself and looked up the pain.
Yeah.
Tattoo.
That sounds awful.
Went in there.
I would think the chest one was a lot worse than the.
No.
Really?
This was like 2 out of 10.
Uh-huh.
This was 0 out of 10. This was a million out of 10.
That sounds awful.
Wow.
You should get an ankle tat, George.
I think that's gonna
Maybe
be
I
really
will.
bad.
Yeah.
So it's called BACITRACIN. BACITRACIN.
Here, let me.
BACITRACIN.
Hey Siri,
Yeah, this is it.
how do you spell BACITRACIN?
BACI.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah, there it is. BACITRACIN.
All right. Well, thank you guys.
You bet.
Thank you.
Good luck.
That is the strangest request that we've ever gotten. Even if we weren't doing a podcast, you would have said, wow, no one's ever come in and asked us how to take care of a tattoo.
I'm glad Josh was here.
Should I go lock the door?
Yeah, you might do that.
I kind of like. I kind of like.
Why?
I kind of like
There's
the open
so much
house.
I missed in that story.
I kind of like the open house that we're having.
Yeah, you
know,
couldn't- you
OU had
couldn't
the open
see.
house on Monday, and we're having an open house basically every day.
There was a question I think that we all wanted to ask, but it might come off as racist.
I don't think there was a question that any of us wanted. What did you want to ask?
Is she looking for the Sooner Club? Like are they O Club or is she? An athlete?
I just figured that. Yeah, I figured that she was walking up to the Sooner Club. We get that every day.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
Literally every day, and it usually 99% of the time is somebody.
But I'm just confused why she thought that we like Sooner Scoop. She saw that on the door and said, "Oh yeah, this is it." This is
I kind of like
tattoo."
that.
Did somebody draw an MD on our?
I don't know.
sign?
I wonder if there was an old tattoo shop here that still
There might have
shows
been.
up as.
Well, there was a vape shop. Actually, you know what? There is a doctor in here because there was a lady that kept parking cockeyed out in front of the office, and she did it came back 3 times, and she's like, "Google is telling me this is a doctor," and I was like, "Man, I tell you, you can look. I can show you every room in here. We're not a doctor. We're not a medical facility."
I don't know how we got wrapped into that, but that was interesting. It was fun.
I think we have to keep some of that in.
I think we should keep
it's
all of it.
of it staying in.
Is that our first surprise guest
Yeah.
in Unofficial 40 history?
We didn't ask
At
her
least,
name.
at least coming on.
Or did we ask
Yeah,
her?
we
She
did.
gave
We
her
asked her name. I don't remember it.
You have to look that up.
Alicia or something.
Okay. Anyway, so we have had a lot of visitors this week. All of them welcome, even Alicia. I mean, we fixed her up. We got her help with the BACITRACIN. But we did have a family from all of our favorite town, Orlando. They drove all the way here, which that is a 20-hour drive, I believe.
That's not a drive that I would ever want to make. You made the drive in 2015.
In 2 days.
Didn't you?
I stopped in Marshall, Texas, and slept, and it was one of those really weird. It was one of those weird residence inns where they had a hot tub in the living room.
Yeah, that is strange.
This feels like a question I've wanted to ask you for a long time. Do you not like flying? Like, you drive absurdly long amounts of time for a place that Southwest flies from all over the country.
You know, there's a online Mythbusters where they figured out if you live, and Orlando is not helping me here. If you live 5 to 6 hours away from somewhere, you get there the same driving as you do flying because the time that you're stuck in airports.
Yeah.
So I do kind of
live.
live Eddie, I never thought going to College Station was all that bad of a drive.
No. I mean,
It's 6.5 hours, that's easy. It's when it gets to 10, like when we would go from Arizona to San Antonio.
yeah, that's a long drive.
That's a long drive.
That's
and
a long
usually
drive.
we're doing it without sleep.
Well, but that was also, I think that more so than the drive, which I really don't mind a road trip, it's the length of the time that we're on the road when we were making those drives.
Well, and it's
we're going weeks.
When it's over, the game is over,
More
and
than-
you have to drive 12 hours. That
Yeah.
sucks because there's so much more you could be doing.
I mean, we were going, when we made the drive from Phoenix to San Antonio, that was on the back end of, I think, 16 or 17 days away, because we went out there for the bowl game, and then we went down there for the entire week of U.S. Army All-American game when they were still the Army game down in San Antonio, and we were still coordinated with it.
Here's my thing,
New Orleans
Josh.
wasn't bad, though.
No,
I
10
didn't think
hours
New
to
Orleans
New
was
Orleans,
bad at
not
all.
bad.
I've taken
Well, that's
buses
right on the
to
cusp.
New
That's
Orleans.
10 hours. So, and here's the thing, Josh. I don't have a fear of flying. I'm not afraid I'm going to die on a flight. What I hate is, 4 hours to 6 hours sitting on airplane seats is very painful for my ass. I just hate it. It's just, I'm not someone, I'm so ADD. You guys know this. I have to be doing something different all the time. And sitting on a plane for 6 hours, I'm not doing this
noticed that
raw
before.
dogging thing that's going on right now where people just stare
Oh my
at the flight
God,
maps.
We need to clip
That's
that.
a nightmare. That's awful.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know anybody. I don't know how anybody would be able to sit on one of those cross-country flights and just sit there and look at the back of the headrest.
yeah, the guy's like, I just raw dog 16
I
hours.
have done the thing where I didn't have anything downloaded on my phone, and they didn't have internet, which I find to be one of the most first world type of problems that we could run into as a flight that doesn't have Wi-Fi, and then you just have to sit there basically looking at your old pictures or old text messages. That's when I start just deleting text messages that I haven't responded to in years.
I like flying. It's very easy.
I think when you're younger, you do like flying a lot.
I enjoy the process of flying. I enjoy
TSA
sitting in terminals with layovers and stuff and
See,
drinking.
terminals though, but I have TSA pre, which makes it so much easier to fly, in my opinion, like, because I just hate waiting in lines. But you know what makes me mad is sitting in terminals and none of the outlets work. That happens all the time. None of the freaking outlets work.
Oh,
They're
at
so
the
poorly
gates.
mounted. Like
Yes.
you'll push a plug in and the whole plug gives.
Yes.
And you're like, that's not going to do any. I'm with you, George. I had that experience that when I had that huge delay coming out of Houston a couple weeks ago when I didn't fly out till like 2 a.m. I could not find a charger anywhere, and I've been sitting in that airport for like 8 hours. It was brutal.
I'm convinced the Denver airport just doesn't have power.
I am that guy.
Well, that's more of what's going on underneath the Denver airport.
The Denver airport, yeah. I will say they redid their TSA lines. It's unbelievable. Very efficient.
Like in the middle?
yes,
much
like it's
better.
totally
Like
different.
that
It's
middle
so
area or
efficient.
whatever?
Yeah.
I am that guy that puts up electrical outlet stickers on the walls to fool you into thinking there's an outlet, and you walk like all the way from the, like 3 seats away or 3 bays away or whatever to find there's no outlet. I
So
do
you're an
enjoy those.
asshole.
I just enjoy those TikToks or reels or whatever. All right, hey, this is peak July. This
Today
is
is
peak
the
July
one,
podcast.
Today is the 1 year anniversary of Tiffany Gomez on the
Is it
on the
really?
flight. Yeah.
Wow.
The 1 year
It's-
anniversary.
That's
Holy
all it's
cow,
been.
really?
Yeah. It's funny. We had this conversation this morning on radio, like how she's been able to kind of survive it. Obviously, she owned it. It helps that she's extremely attractive. And then the Hawk-Tua girl, I think I'm done with that.
Did you see her interview with Bree?
We're at 1501 with her. It's done.
Did you see it? She is. She's legitimately a stupid person.
Well, I mean,
Like she's. I guess she flunked out of school,
that sounds.
but now she's going to move to L.A. or New York. She hasn't decided.
She got
yet.
representation.
Yes.
I'm not
How
sure
the
what she.
does that happen?
Well, I think what's going to end up happening is what happens to a lot of people that move to Los Angeles. She'll be back home in a couple years and a little bit more rugged
Oh, she'll be in the valley.
than she left.
She'll be in the valley. She's not going to be working in Hollywood.
No.
Yeah, she is not impressive. I mean, I bet after Bree interviewed her, Zach Bryan, he's probably ashamed he even brought her up for Revelry
Yeah, it's.
or for
Yeah.
I think we're at the end of that. It was fun. While
I just love, like, they were like, what do your
Revival.
parents think about it? And she was like, oh, they know how I am. I'm just going to say whatever. And I'm like, girl, like, all of us, we kind of say what's on our mind, but there's a point when your parents are ashamed of you. Like,
Yeah,
let's
Josh,
be
you
real
and
about it.
I watched that, and you're like, God, I'm glad I don't have a daughter like that. I'm glad I don't have a
Yes,
daughter I have to
oh,
worry
God.
about like that. Like, ugh.
No. My children know they would be, disavowed and completely left in the dark. They're aware of that.
All right, real quick, we want to get to just the week that has been. It's been crazy. The heat is driving everyone crazy. I think you got a pretty good example of what the heat's doing to people. People can't drive out there in the heat. It's including myself. It's getting very bad. I had to make a crosstown trip to the banks yesterday. It was not fun. I almost got just T-boned by another driver. But we did have a lot of visitors in town this week. Some of them came to the Scoop offices. One guy came in and bought a bunch of merch. We had a whole family come in here, and they were like, it was. I wish Eddie could have been here, because George and I just walk around Eddie, and it's just like he's a vacuum. He just sucks everybody in. Like, Eddie, can I get a picture with you? Eddie, this and that. As you guys were coming off the Finebaum set, I think you took 4 or 5 pictures with people. But he is a way bigger celebrity than any of us. But we had this family come in from Orlando, as I said, and want to give them a shout out. Their son's name is Freddy, but the dad is Tad, the mom is Leslie, and he also had a sister with him, and her name was Faith. And so Freddy came in, and he's like just almost hyperventilating. He's so excited, and I show him around the studios, and we're reaching the youngsters, and we've always done that with the U40, but usually we would hear it would be Eddie. A lot of times it'd be parents in the airport coming up and say, "Man, we love your show. I let my kids listen in the car. They need to learn good words. They need to learn that cussing."
Well, it's a live podcast. I think
Yes.
more so than it is a sporting podcast.
It is letting your children know that how people talk in the normal world. That's
right.
That's been a big part of
They're
the U40
preparing
over
themselves.
the years. So anyway, they were very excited, and I said, "Do you guys want to sit where we sit when we do the podcast?" Like, I knew how to play it up, and so they were very excited. And They were telling me we listen to the podcast so much that we can recite the opening, and so I let Freddie sit down. Faith sat down next to him. I thought they were going to do it together, but here is Freddie and his recital of the opening of the Unofficial 40 podcast. And I've done
back and bigger than ever. It's the Unofficial 40 from SoonerScoop.com. Now, here's your entire SoonerScoop crew: Carey, Josh, Eddie, and Bob. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'll try to know it's a 40 from SoonerScoop.com. Welcome. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Pretty good.
That was pretty good, amazing. Freddie. So it was great having you and your sister and your folks in. So hope you had a safe trip back to Orlando. But yeah,
I can't get the big voice guy to say my name, and I can't say the kid fans that we have to say my name on the pod.
Well, to be fair,
what
we
even
just
is your name?
replaced.
Who are you?
Actually, here's the bad news, George. We're replacing our opening with this one for the rest of time.
That's fine, but that kid better send in a new version.
We really should have. We should have like a fan do it, like somebody like let them like submit them. And
there have been people that have submitted opens.
That one,
yeah, but the
good.
AI. I'm not for the AI music. I know we had some sponsors and stuff that wanted to help rep with that, but I don't know. I don't need hair metal openers. We're not trying to reach the 60-year-old crowd.
I never listen, so it doesn't really matter to me.
So anyway, appreciate
it.
That was great. Great to know that you guys are out there listening and enjoying it, and even memorizing the opening of the podcast. I need to go back and figure it out. I could do it. It's got to be. We've got to be over 10 years now on the Unofficial 40. But
probably you should have heard the diatribe the kid went on about Joe Biden and the current state of the Democratic National Party after he did the open, though. We cut it off at the end.
And how Hunter's now running everything.
I mean, it must just be take your kid to work day up at the White House, which I don't think is the worst idea in the entire world.
All right, I think we've gone political enough.
No more naps?
Banned from the message board just from the podcast. All right, so congratulations, you two. You are going worldwide, and I'm talking about Eddie and George. Eddie made his first appearance on the Paul Finebaum Show, and it was your first time appearing as a duo, a grouper, which you've done for Andy Staples quite a bit, so you're used to that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance we go on Finebaum again as a duo. Like, I think that was some good back and forth. I was just like genuinely shocked when Paul just opens up by saying, like, Eddie, I'm surprised you haven't been on before. I'm like, holy shit, here we go.
Your face, it's my favorite part of that entire clip besides him, I think, buttering me up, which, by the way, I've come to the conclusion, I've come with the hypothesis that I think he definitely buttered me up a little bit. And the next time that I go on, I think that it's going to be pretty rough.
You're going to push
back?
I
think he's going to come after me a little bit.
Well, he wanted you, he was trying to get you because...
He was trying to incite me.
Well, Michael Bratton went on right before.
And there was some insight going on there.
He's bold and brash. He'll just say, whatever, and just give out hot takes.
Who came in and talked with us, if you want to see that up on the SoonerScoop.com YouTube.
But I think Paul thought that Eddie was just going to come on and have these hot takes. What he doesn't realize is Eddie isn't really a hot take guy. He's more of he's going to throw conspiracies at you and try and get your show canceled.
He says this often. He's not about the laughs. He's about the gasps.
Yes. I don't think Paul understood that. I think Paul thought you were going to come on and say something like super hot take.
I told George on Monday night, though, I'm going to have to live with myself knowing that I kind of let him off the hook when we were talking about the Twitter, being locked out of Twitter. I should have said something to the effect of, I was wondering about your whereabouts on J6. And then I could have said, I'm just kidding. I knew you were at the national championship game. That's what I should have said.
That would have been great.
It would have been amazing. But so if we are back on, in Dallas, down in 2 weeks, I'm thinking of something. You know how, Joe C gave him the fedora. I'm not going to go buy something, but I think I am going to try to give him something.
We should definitely give him a scoop shirt or...
Well, no, I want it to be something that, almost a gag of a gift. Maybe something from Norman, though. I don't know what that would be.
He could have used the scoop shirt. That man was sweating. I thought it was just going to be a puddle of Paul by the time that show. And it was miserable out there.
It was extremely miserable.
I think he was getting delirious.
Yeah.
Like, I was still like, he kept the Eddie bit going for a while. I was like, are we going to talk about football at all?
I kind of like the direction of the interview, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed
his
all
interview
10
with
minutes
SEC
of it.
Mike was a lot like that too, though. It was kind of.
I think he was getting towards the end of the day, and he was just like, let's just BS around a little bit.
Yeah,
He's like me in the 4th hour radio today. I don't even know what I said.
Yeah.
I mean, how many?
Really, you could tell he really wanted Eddie to go in on the Twitter situation. Like he really, he tried several times.
Well, and
Eddie, what did
it's
you
unfortunate that there really isn't a story.
Yeah,
to it. I have no idea what happened.
I don't think he realized, because when you said
he thought you got banned from
or
Twitter,
something,
yeah.
and it was like, no, like it was just a bullshit deal.
I was like,
I just
locked
locked
out.
myself out of my own account because I tried to put in a password too many
I
times.
still don't know what happened there, because there was a lot of people. I talked to Chris Vanini, the college football writer, because he DM'd me on Threads, actually. It was like, or not DM me, but messaged me back and was like, same thing happened to me. You just got to give it time, basically.
Yeah.
It sucked. It was not a good time to be locked out, too, with all the Skip Johnson stuff that was out there.
Well, and that's another thing. It was crazy. It was a crazy 24 hours with that, because it didn't ramp up. It just became all of a sudden these reports out of the blue, that were just ridiculous.
Yeah, I just kept asking people that were in the know, where is this stuff coming from? It did make me feel better, though, about an hour into the pandemonium, when Kendall Rogers basically tweeted out,
this is bullshit.
What we had heard and what we had put on the board, just in terms of I would still be really surprised if he left. He doesn't want to leave. That was the one constant that I had talked to people inside the program about. And I think that it all ended up kind of coinciding at a really ironic time with him actually meeting with Joe C. That wasn't an emergency meeting as much as it was the annual year in review meeting.
And I would say, from the people that I talked to in administration, as well as I talked to some donors, there was just some conversations that I think Skip said, hey, I'm obviously a hot name out there. I want to stay at OU, but we need to make some things happen, whether that's contract stuff, which I really got the sense that his contract, which he is going to get a bump at the next Regents meeting, I don't think that was a huge deal to him. It was more so, hey, we need the facilities to compete in this league. Yeah. And if we don't get them, then, I don't know if I'm going to get offered this A&M job or a different job or whatever, but yeah, I'm going to seriously consider that. But the thing is that you had people reporting that he was already leaving. He was never even offered the job.
Yeah.
It was more so that he was going to OU and saying, look, we gotta get better as a program.
I think more than anything, that was my biggest takeaway from Monday, just in terms of talking to Dari Doka and talking to, hearing from Dustin Dvorak as well. I didn't really get a whole lot out of what Greg Sankey or Joe Harris or Joe Castiglione said. We had heard all of that before, but I think somebody like a Dari coming in and basically saying they have to do something at L-Del or it's going to be the sore eye of the SEC. I think it I don't know if it drives home the point. I think everybody kind of knows it already, but we'll see.
But there have been some pretty good gifts that have come in for the baseball,
and I think there are more coming. It's my understanding that day that all this was going down with Skip, there were some conversations with the powers that be that have been donating some of the money, that they are looking for more, and I think that money is going to be coming. So they're very close on the renovation.
Well,
project.
and I believe one of the bigger donations, maybe in the $750 range, had come from Jinx, and I thought it was interesting that Skip was in Tulsa on Monday morning, and
so was
Brent was over there with him as well. Is Brent becoming a closer for donors as well? Because he's definitely become a closer for recruits, even those that aren't on his side of the ball. I would imagine bringing Brent into a donor and prying a little bit more money out of him wouldn't be that difficult, as dynamic as he is.
I could see that. I could also see
it's a total theory.
No,
I don't know. I'm not saying that that's what happened.
If you asked me what it was on Monday, how they decided, I think they just decided, all right, Josie and Patty are going to be in Oklahoma City. We'll send Brent and Skip to Tulsa.
Because Brent's going to be doing a lot of stuff around here.
Yeah, and Coach Switzer obviously was up in Tulsa as well. I don't know. I don't know what went into the actual like decision-making process on how they were going to split up the coaches.
Yeah, I mean, that's just it's July conversations is what that
100%,
is, basically.
100%.
Well, Eddie, you did a great job. And this is what people have to realize. Like, George knows this. When we have, it's, I think the last big office-wide thing that we were all kind of working on was the Dominic Williams thing. But when stuff like this happens, it rarely happens instantaneously. Like, and it doesn't always happen behind the scenes. Like, a coach, he's made a deal and he's going to take the job. Like, that stuff coming out of the blue rarely ever happens anymore. Even the Schlossnagel stuff, like, I think Kendall Rogers had he'd done the best he could to hint at something being up.
He was, like, looking back on all of it now, and I think I told you at the time on even, what would that have been, like last Monday before it all went down, he had been so quiet to a certain extent on that coaching search that when he did say something and it was that,
it was almost like they were taking the field, and he was like, there may be something.
Right. Like, it was almost like, so your silence almost kind of told the story there.
Yeah. But, I mean, all of that stuff, it takes, a lot of looking into things. And it is the enjoy vision, look around. And Eddie certainly was looking around, as George was too, to find out what was going on with Skip when all that stuff was coming out. But for a fresh perspective, we go to a man with perfect vision. Eddie Radosevich.
Yeah, Enjoy Vision is the best laser vision center in Oklahoma City. It's not even close. The combination of mind-blowing technology, experienced eyeball surgeons, and exceptional patient care was life-changing for me. So what they're doing for you, if you don't, what is his name? Jean-Pierre Paul yourself this weekend. Isn't that the Giants defensive end? Jason Pierre-Paul,
yes.
Handless,
JPP.
fingerless JPP. If you don't do that to yourself this weekend, you have eye problems, you can go to Enjoy Vision. And you can go to enjoywithme.com. That is the letter NJOY with me.com. Use promo code U40, $400 off of LASIK. I think it's a pretty good idea. Get a couple volumes out of it. Knock it out. Enjoy Vision.
You're
this
only
is where
supposed
you
to have
LASIK.
one. That second one was not one they gave to you.
Well, and the third one was one that I bought from a kid at Homeland parking lot on 122nd in Rockwell. It's good to see they're still open in business.
These days.
It might.
I feel bad for the homeless right now. Like, I know I usually rip on them and hate them, but it's miserable out there.
It is miserable hot. I think we're supposed to, like, going into the weekend, into the 4th of July weekend, it's going to be beautiful around here by tomorrow night.
Really?
Yeah, like,
we getting some cold fronts coming in?
Yeah, like legitimate 80s next week.
Hell yeah. I'm going to be at the lake.
It's going to be great.
You're not helping yourself. You're trying to shake the I'm here all the time. I'm not taking vacation.
Well, this is a holiday.
To be fair, yeah, it's a national holiday. It's our nation's birthday.
I would just stop talking about the things that you do.
Well, I think a lot of people. I think what it was a lot of people got confused with me going to Destin, and they thought, "Oh, that's vacation." No, it's not vacation. Lots of work was done there, and going to weddings.
All of it was work
on the weekends. Weddings are no vacation. Let me tell you.
But see, you went to Destin, and one of the few things you Instagrammed was you on the beach. That doesn't help you.
The 5 minutes I was out there.
Yeah, that doesn't help you.
Yeah, but I mean, what
makes it look like you're just out gallivanting around in the beach.
Well,
but it's for the gram. Oh, we gotta let those
I sold a
people
lot
know,
of
living the
subs. I sold a lot
fabulous
of subs
lifestyle.
out there. Sold a lot of subs.
You did sell a lot of. I'll say this: George was the sub leader in the network, sub selling leader in the network that month.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're welcome.
Suck that, you vacation.
When we
shamers.
told him that, is that when he scheduled the Colorado trip? Like, did that all coincide, George?
See you later.
That was his spiking of the football. Yes. All right. So, we all were out at the celebration. We stayed as long as I think. What did we make it till, like 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock?
Well, that's a big window, but yeah, I mean. I wasn't
you
out
were
at
done. You went on at 5:30, so we were over there for at least an hour and a half.
I think we were walking
it
it back
8.
around 7 o'clock. Yeah,
Okay.
There just really wasn't a whole lot for me to see there. But I hope a lot of people went down there. I think that there was a lot of people that came down after
the sun went down.
The sun went
people
down.
started
It
kind
was
of
miserable.
Yeah,
I don't blame
filing
anybody.
over there.
And for what it was, which was basically a celebration and a fundraiser to a certain extent, I think it was very well accomplished.
And they had a massive turnout at the equipment sale. Because I saw a bunch of
Yeah, your parents didn't get anything, did they?
Yeah, they didn't. They weren't ever able to get in, and they didn't want to wait in the line. I mean, it was
people had been camping out all night too.
Yeah, but because I saw a bunch of like Texas fan accounts kind of bashing on OU's attendance at it, and I was just like, well, one, you didn't see the equipment sale, which was just absurd.
Two,
and
yours was on a Sunday,
and it's in Austin.
Yeah,
like people are just. There's a lot more people there to just show up, and yeah, it was on a Sunday, and it was just hot as hell on Monday here. I mean, just brutally hot.
I'm slowly trickling in. Maybe this is a sign of maturation, but anybody that wants to troll about like, the crowd size and stuff like that, I think that's
you're a loser.
That's what fans do.
Yeah,
they just take shots at each other.
It's
kind of like
growth.
It is growth, and I think it is part of like. Did you see Barrett? Is it Saleh or Saleh?
Saleh.
His take on Oklahoma entering the SEC. He had like a minute 50 rant about it that he put online, and of course OU fans are taking it very kindly because it was just stupid. It was a stupid argument.
What was it?
Basically, OU is going to be like an Ole Miss in the SEC, like an Auburn. That's good enough every once in a while. But he listed all these like weird like reasons, and one of them was recruiting. Which, like, we were literally just having this conversation yesterday on the recruiting report. This is as good as Oklahoma's recruited in a long, long time. And then he started talking about, like, the location of Norman. I made, full disclosure, I made it 45 seconds in and had to get out of it. I was like, okay, I think I'm good here.
Yeah, everyone in the SEC is kind of in a remote location.
Well, and everybody in the SEC's figured out all you got to do is tweet about Oklahoma and the fans will go crazy.
And that's every fan base.
Sure.
In the
I
SEC,
think people do, and I'm sure that is with Texas, but I think OU fans just need, they never will, but you need to just stop reacting to that kind of stuff. They're just trying to goad you into engagement.
I think there's a lot of, obviously there's a lot of pride in this state in the football team, but I also just feel like there's a lot of fans that feel disrespected heading into this season just because of the way people are talking about this team, and I get it. I mean, I get it from both sides because there's a lot of skepticism. But
the one thing I've been surprised about with the fan reaction is, I know you've said it a lot, George, publicly, on when you go on Finebaum and things like that, Andy Staples. But 9-3 would be a good season. I've been surprised that more fans haven't been like 9-3. Are you crazy? That's going to be terrible. Like, I think fans, I've been impressed by their expectations that they're not like, if it's not 12-0, it's nothing. Like,
well, I think it does help that there's going to be a 12-team playoff because I think you can sell them on, like, if you go 9-3, you're in the playoff and you have a chance at. Obviously, I don't think anybody would pick them to win the national title, but you make the playoff. That's a really good, successful year. Now, if it was still a 4-team playoff and you went 9-3 and you finished like 12th in the country, I think people wouldn't be as fired up. But if you go 9-3 and you make the playoff and maybe you get a good draw and you can win a game or two, then you feel a lot better. But I think that's part of it, and I think fans also realize how tough the schedule is. I mean, they're not stupid.
The biggest thing that fans, have concern about to me moving forward is if your team loses a game they shouldn't. Like, you can no longer afford to lose games that you shouldn't. Being in the SEC, playing the type of schedule, when the margin is so slim, like, between Ole Miss and Missouri, that's going to be two similar type opponents. You may win one, you may lose one. You may win both, but the thing is, you can't go to Auburn and have them have a terrible season and lose your first road game in the SEC and expect to finish the season the way you want to.
Yeah, you go to Auburn and play like Oklahoma played at Kansas or Oklahoma State last week.
Oh,
you're going to get run. Like, it's a different thing altogether. So I just. People, and that's the thing. Like, I keep hearing like OU fans like, "Oh, they're disrespecting us." Think we're going to lose 3 or 4 games. It's got nothing to do with not thinking OU's good. I've not heard any national person that doesn't think Oklahoma has a good team this year. It's just the schedule's hell.
Yeah, no, I agree, Josh. And I was looking at, I saw someone put out, I think it's Kelly Ford, who does a really good job with some like deep dive analytics, which it's hard. I take into account some of these analytics, but it's also one of those things that, like, how accurate can they really be factoring in transfer portal and just additions and things like that. But I saw something where they put out where I think OU's expected wins this year is like 8.2, but they have like 4 games, and it was Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, and LSU that are basically coin flip games. And it's like that to me, it's those games. And you could throw Tennessee and Auburn, I think, are going to be tough games, but I think OU should win those. But if those other 4 games are coin flip games and you can win 2 of those 4, then maybe you do win 9 games. Maybe you do somehow win 10 games, which if you win 10 games, you had a hell of a year.
Let me ask this question. We all believe that OU's defense is in a much better place than they've been in a decade. Since I would say 2011 is the last time I think OU could really say they had a really good quality defense. Do you think there's still growing pains for this defense and these players to go through playing in the SEC that didn't get exposed in the Big 12?
I think it's, for me, the defense, the growing pains will be, like, I think they're going to be really good to start the year. It's, can they physically hold up in this league in the back half of the schedule? Because Dari Noka said it really well the other day. Those last 3 games at Missouri, Alabama at home, at LSU. That's because, like, I think mentally they're there. They're understanding the defense. I think athletically they're there. But do they really have that physical capability? And not just like, I think they're physically strong, obviously, and they've got big players and athletic players. But do they have a true 6-man rotation on the defensive line? Do they have a true 5-man rotation at defensive end that late in the season, if somebody's hurt, or if
think about Danny Stutzman at Kansas and Oklahoma State, yeah.
Or at safety, like, do they have the guys back there that are capable to step up in those 3 games at the end of the season and play well? Like, that to me is the defensive growing pains that we're going to see them maybe go through, because I think they're going to be really good to start the year. It's, can they hold up late in the season for me?
And I will say, there was nothing wrong with what Kip Lewis did coming in for Stutzman at Bedlam. So it wasn't like the defense fell apart because
Kobe
of
McKenzie.
that.
Kobe McKenzie played a lot in that game, but Jaron Kanik was a drop-off, and he played some in that game. Like, that to me is going to have to be the difference.
But then you had Billy Bowman kind of being a savior in the BYU game with the pick 6.
Right. So, I mean, it's just all those things. It's like that to me, because I don't think mentally there's any growing pains anymore. Like, these guys, especially the guys that have been here now, they get the defense. They understand it. I think Zach Alley's helped probably a lot with that.
It's a lot easier to be somewhat confident about the defense when you think about all the guys and the experience that they have coming back. At the end of the day, like, it's hard to get by thinking that Danny Stutzman's going to have, who was named which, by the way, preseason All-Americans on July 3rd seems a little aggressive, but he was named an All-American today by Walter Camp.
It's not like the rosters are going to change, though.
No. I
much
get it.
know what you know.
I get it.
He's going to be on every preseason list.
Sure.
I think he'll be first team All-SEC preseason. I think he'll be the lone OU guy on there.
Sorry, George. I apologize.
Go
ahead. My question, you're talking about, like, can they hold up? The thing I wonder about is, with some of these guys that have been, whether standouts or just good, solid Big 12 players, is there some hesitancy by Brent Venables and the staff? And I've got a couple guys in my mind. I won't, we'll see where you guys are with this. But with some of these guys that have been good players in the Big 12, is there going to be a little bit of early season, like, we're going to go with who we know, we're going to go with the guys that have always played, and then as the season wears on, you start to see guys like, Des Malone, maybe some of these other guys that are bigger, more physical, whatever you want to call it, start to take on bigger roles as they start facing off better athletes and playing, the Tennessees, the Auburns, and then obviously as you get into Alabama and Missouri and all those kind of teams. Like, I just wonder, you could kind of get away with a guy that maybe is a touch slow or a touch small in the Big 12. Can you allow that to go on in the SEC? I just kind of wonder about that.
Well, I mean, but we're also talking about an SEC team a conference in the SEC that it really hasn't been as much about being slower as it has been being more physical. Like, it's in the trenches. I mean, that's all that's been talked about is in the trenches. I honestly don't think that, say, an Ole Miss secondary is that different from an Oklahoma State secondary. I mean, which has been good, but I don't think that there's some type of ceiling or floor for either one that's higher or lower than the other. I think where the difference is defensive linemen and offensive tackles. I mean, that to me, and your ability to run the football. I'm not saying it's like Big Ten, but the offenses are just now, like Jeff Lebby was considered revolutionary in the SEC. He was, I can't believe I'm going to say this, he was no Lincoln Riley. I mean, he was no, Mike Leach brought something to the Big 12 that the SEC had to catch up with. I mean, Nick Saban, people act like Nick Saban is just producing all these Heisman quarterbacks. They had to break through that wall of conservative that Alabama had, where they just thought that they could do a lot of play action, run the football. Like, it took a while for Nick Saban to realize, and maybe it was Lane Kiffin was the first. Was he the first coordinator that was truly just airing it out in Alabama?
Yeah, that was kind of when they took the shackles off.
Yeah.
When he went around on that tour. And I know he met with Lincoln Riley and several others, just kind of getting input on what they wanted the Alabama offense to be.
But, I mean, let's face it. Let's not act like the SEC has been offensively revolutionary or anything. They've caught up with everybody else.
I think to a certain extent that they were – it's like they had to play catch-up, but when they did catch up – everybody caught up, it seems like, in that league. And then all of a sudden they went through that run of quarterbacks, and all of a sudden Mike Leach was putting offenses together in Starkville that were averaging 700 yards a game. And I think Alabama, like, they always, it's always started on the defensive side of the ball. And it's kind of like what Teddy said, or Dusty said on Monday, just in terms of, you look at all of the run that Alabama, or, as of late with Georgia, it starts on the defensive side of the football. It started with the defensive side of the football. They've had really good offenses.
It does. And then I would also say, when we're talking about these big offenses, all these SEC teams, at least the good ones, are able to run the football extremely well.
Sure.
I mean, even look at Missouri last year. They were able to run the football, and that's what brought them a lot of success. So,
but I'll say that the beginning of the offense, when it started to break through in the SEC, when Oklahoma played Georgia in the
Rose Bowl.
God, I always forget. When they play, I mean,
it's in California. It's like Los Angeles.
I've been there. Yes, I was there. It's the coughing. If their defense wasn't so shitty, they would have just murdered Georgia in that game. I mean, they ran out to such a big lead.
Yeah, I mean, they would have dominated. They would have
won
game.
easily. They would have won going.
They almost did it without a defense.
Don't squib kick them.
Ironically,
yeah.
I mean, after Stephen Parker
but
returned that kick,
Kyler Murray,
fumble.
They spotted him 28-0, but Kyler Murray actually made that a game. So, like, the offenses at Oklahoma were so far ahead of the defenses anywhere.
Yeah, but then again, you go back to, like, that turn did start in 2017, but by 2019, and then you show up at the Peach Bowl, and that offense that LSU had might be one of the best of all time.
And that defense was really good. But I think it, honestly, we can sit here and talk about all this, and I think it's all important. Like, they have to be really good in the trenches. But for me, if OU is going to get to 9-3 or 10-2 and just exceed expectations next year, Jackson Arnold has to be like a top 3 to top 5 quarterback in this league.
Yes,
like, he has to be special. And I'm not saying he has to just, he has to be a Heisman finalist, but he has to be in that same tier of some of these top guys.
And we don't know how he's going to handle the pressure of it all. Still, I mean, there's not enough
physically and mentally. Like, I think the pressure of being the quarterback, and then also the pressure that he might face in his actual face,
right,
in plays. Like,
and that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Like, how he handles the pressure of coming through against the best competition that's out there.
Well, and we talk about these games late in the season. I think they're going to play a lot of. Brent talked about it in Destin a lot of fourth quarter, last possession type games. Jackson's going to have a lot of opportunities to say, all right, man, you've got 4 minutes to run the clock out or 4 minutes to go score and win the game. Like, those situations are going to come up a lot this year.
That's like the number one thing as we like make this shift into whatever, football season or quote unquote, is the number that we have talked about, George, on I think almost every recruiting report or every practice report and or every interview that we've done with Staples and as well as Finebaum on Monday, the 3-7 record in 1-score games. Like, that has to change, or you are going to be looking at a 7-5 type season.
Yep.
They are going to play in tight ball games, whether it be on September 28th in Auburn in that first road game or whenever, even maybe the week before against Tennessee, that you're going to have to make plays late in the game to win. That's like the name of the game in the SEC. You're not going to go in and win by 3 touchdowns at places anymore. And that, I mean, honestly, you hadn't been doing that in a while, even in the Big 12.
Speaking of Lincoln Riley, how about the shot from Tennessee?
Yeah.
We got to talk about that.
You guys are going to do
awesome.
a report here in just a bit, but we'll get more into that on YouTube, but playing the video for you and everything. But Joe is,
that feels like he's been holding on to that
that's not
for a
something
while.
that Joe does a lot.
No, and I think he just said, screw it.
We're
Just let it
celebrating.
rip.
I'm going to finally it's been long enough. I'm finally going to have my say. That's how I kind of took it.
I know. Lon Kruger throwing him under the bus.
It is wild to me, and I know that
I don't think he was. By the way, for anybody that doesn't get, he wasn't.
I had
talking about
so
Lon
many
Kruger.
people in my mentions that actually thought I was talking about Lon Kruger when I tweeted that.
Oh boy,
there are so many reasons to laugh and gloat about everything that's happened in Los Angeles, and especially in the recruiting trail here over the last month, really, for USC. But at some point, it's not going to be fun anymore, and it is going to be a point of we need to move on at some point. But at the same time, it is amazing just how poorly, from the outside looking in, that's gone.
Well, and what's crazy is everybody's been talking, at least to us, and we live in this Oklahoma bubble, so it's different. But everyone's talked about, is the pressure on for Brent this year? Is all this stuff, and it's man, is the pressure's on for Lincoln Riley maybe more than a lot. I mean, other than maybe Billy Napier at Florida, which it seems like that's already a closed deal. But I would
Mike
say,
loves him some Billy Napier, doesn't he?
Gosh, yeah, he ripped him. But I think Lincoln Riley might be under the hot seat more than anybody.
I guess the thing that they fall back on, and when you look at the 2 years that each coach has been at each place, they did, go to the Cotton Bowl. They were able to kind of get over that hump. They were able to win to go to the Pac-12 championship game in both of those years. And Oklahoma hasn't, they
played in the Pac-12 title game last year.
Yeah, didn't they?
I thought it was
USC. No.
Oh, they
Oregon
did in
and
Washington.
Who am I thinking? Oh, yeah, it was Washington and Oregon. I'm an idiot. Well, never mind.
2 years ago they
full
did.
retraction.
They were
Full
really
retraction.
bad. Remember last year?
That's right. They got their ass beat by Utah.
Yes,
Right.
they lost
That's right.
3
That's
or 4
right.
games
That's
in a row.
right.
Yeah, that was
Well, it all
that was
started
actually a
when
big
we were
boy
watching it.
championship
Yes.
game last
At
year.
OU Texas. Yeah. Never mind. Full retraction.
The heat is making everyone's brains melt a little bit. There are words that I can't pronounce right now. I don't know what's happening. Anyway, so yeah, I mean it's going to be fun. And by the way, the press conference, with Joe Castiglione and Joe Harris and Greg Sankey, I would say that I kind of took some stuff out just about. And George, I know you tried to ask the question about, can you take us back to when you knew that this was going to happen, and Joe kind of refused to really get into it. But I thought Sankey got into it a little bit, and I think Joe Harris was not afraid to get into it a little bit. But I think when Joe Harris said, Joe Harris, I think he was the one that said when that also was it the Alston case he was talking about that came the verdict came out.
Yes.
He said that he knew that it was going to change everything, and then that's when they knew that the SEC is probably something they need to explore.
Well, and Joe, I thought it was interesting. Joe C. said that not necessarily that they were thinking about moving to the SEC 10 years ago, but 10 years ago they had been, just saying, well, at some point we might have to leave. Conference realignment's a real thing that's going to happen in college athletics. They just didn't know when. And, I'd love to know the behind the curtain kind of stuff about where they were meeting, when that initial phone call happened, the reactions, which we never really got. But, I do think that it did happen somewhat quickly. Where were you guys when that news broke?
I was watching SEC Media Day coverage on ESPN Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
And the first thing I remember was people interviewing Ross Bjork, who was the athletic director at Texas A&M at the time.
He was
not happy. Yeah. And I can't remember how that came out initially.
Houston Chronicle.
Brent Zwerneman did it. Okay, yeah. That's right.
Because we
forgot.
had just wrapped up. In fact, I think we were back in Oklahoma City by that time, but Big 12 Media Day was still going on.
We were
but
leaving,
OU had gone the day before.
Right.
If I remember correctly.
And then that broke right as we were leaving. And then SEC Media Day started almost immediately after that. But I mean, look, it's listening to those guys.
that was Yeah, not the SEC Media Day that we went to.
Right,
Obviously.
That was, I think it was still in Hoover then.
Yeah, or Birmingham or wherever they were doing it at the time. I don't remember if they were in Nashville yet.
So, yeah, I mean, just listening to them, it all makes sense. And listening to everybody yesterday and the coaches, by the way, most of them have no choice in this, have no say in it. I mean, they just have to accept it. And I think I've always, since Brent's come in here, knowing that it's going to happen, what I've always thought was good and kind of appreciated was that he embraced it and he told people, like, look, things are changing and we have to get better. And he knows how good they have to be to compete because he's done it at Clemson. And to me, that's what's kind of made this a lot smoother transition than it could have been. Josh, I don't know if you want to pick up there.
No, I kind of was just enjoying letting you guys go because this is obviously with you being around it the last few days, and then obviously just the relationships you all have with Joe is so different. But I mean, for me, I think the interesting thing about watching all of this the past few days, I'm just going to kind of pivot back to something I guess I'm comfortable with, but was I'm interested with like Oklahoma fans seeing, and I mean, I guess the same is true from the Texas side of things, but like just how close that, Del Conte and Castiglione, they seem to work well together and all that sort of thing. I'm almost surprised that doesn't ruffle more feathers than it does. And I don't think it should. I'm not, like, oh, what do you guys should be pissed about this. It just always kind of surprises me that these diehard Oklahoma fans that get mad at, one of us when we're not, convinced OU is going to win a national title every year or whatever. These guys are the kind of, they're the ones that I expect to kind of rattle their sabers and be mad that Oklahoma seems to be going, along with Texas into the SEC. So, I guess on such good terms.
It's funny you say that. It made me look up, is DeLoss Dodds dead? DeLoss Dodds, the former athletic director at Texas, which here was a problem with DeLoss Dodds, is that he always seemed to magnify or amplify Texas's arrogance. And I think it killed their relationship with Nebraska, severed their relationship with Missouri. Colorado was pissed off no matter who was going to be there because they sucked, and they blamed it all on geography. And now they went where they wanted to go, and they still suck. And now are they an ACC school now? Oh, they're a Big 12 school. What am I talking about? So now they're back, at the Big 12. But like that was the problem with OU-Texas relations, was Texas's arrogance was being amplified by DeLoss Dodds. And I think Chris Del Conte, he manages that so much better, and he knows it's more about external relationships than it is letting the big money people have a voice that goes out into the public. And I this would not happen probably if DeLoss Dodds was still the athletic. He's 86 now.
Do you think a part of that too is nowadays the way that college athletics works?
Cable cutting.
Don't like necessarily like as an administrator, I guess would be the angle you take this from, but like you kind of need the fan more than ever. So you're not going to really kind of throw your weight around as an athletic director as much because you're going to be running back to these same people saying, "Hey, we need 150,000 extra to make this advancement with the NIL project, or we need 300,000 to finish off this end of the stadium."
And who I think gets that maybe more than anybody? Joe Harris.
Yeah.
When you talk about people in leadership positions, this move doesn't happen without Joe Harris. This move definitely doesn't happen if David Bourne. I've said this a couple times now. How do you think
this would have gone if Bourne was 10 years younger or something?
Yeah, not to put it on DeLoss Dodds. David Bourne was just as responsible for the
I think OU's either in the Big Ten or the Pac-12 is still alive because he wanted to go to the Pac-12.
Oh, Bourne wanted to go to the Big Ten because they were
right.
research universities, which is interesting to me. I don't know if it's a shot at David Bourne, but hearing Joe Harris talk about, and he did it at the luncheon early in the morning. he's mentioning becoming an AAU member more and more and more. Basically, he's saying, you know, that other guy that used to be here and he wanted to chase the AAU, accreditation, and because all the Big Ten schools were in it. What Joe Harris is saying, if we go to the SEC, it raises the profile of our entire university. It builds it expands our enrollment and increases the chance that we can bring in more research grant dollars and become an AAU. So he's basically saying, we're kind of like, by the way, your quote to Finebaum about George Lynn Cross was, it was right up there. I told you he would like it. He loved it.
I think that Joe Harris has the same mindset.
That's the point I was getting ready to make. He's using more the George L. Cross, way of thinking of, let's have a great football program that attracts everything, that becomes the gravity that brings everyone into the University of Oklahoma.
My takeaway from getting to know Joe Harris this last year now, as he's become the full-time president and really kind of obviously led the way with the SEC stuff, is that he's a competitive son of a bitch and he wants to win. And he is just as big of a fan of the football team as a lot of people, because he knows that's where the money is. I mean, that's a large reason why people come to school here. People, myself, I came to OU because I grew up going to OU football games, not because I thought they had a good journalism program. Shout out Gaylord, but like,
I think that's like one of the big things that when you talk about the move and what we've talked about for the last 3.5 years, it seems like on any type of appearance that we do on TV or radio, is this idea that, like, I do think that you're right, George. Joe Harris understands that the university is going to be better when the football team is better, or when they're competing for championships.
And I don't think David Bourne had that same mindset.
No, I think he appreciated it to a certain extent, but I don't think that he understood the magnitude that it can have. And I don't think that there's any better example than like the studies that came out after Nick Saban retired and the attendance that had increased because Alabama had built what they had in the football side of things. Yeah. Like, you're getting people that are coming in from New Jersey. I don't know if that's going to be the same here at Oklahoma, but at the same time, I do think that like it plays such a big role in everything that, this university has to a certain extent. It should be easier if you're winning football games. Like, the money will come in.
I will tell you this. This is how much OU needed the change in leadership for this to happen, is that, toward the end of his tenure, it was when all the CTE stuff was going on, and David Bourne's firm belief was that football as a sport was going to go away because of it. And, that's the person that was making the decisions on what conference you should join. So it was not a good situation for the football program or the Big 12. And look, Bob Bowlesby, he has a certain amount of blame, and I know people have taken great care. Even Greg Sankey has kind of prefaced some of his comments about criticizing where OU was by saying, I love Bob Bowlesby, he's a mentor, he's a friend. But he was basically saying, he became inactive and ineffective and let this conference wither away on a vine. Like, Bob Bowlesby getting out was the first step, but it was a step too late because OU and Texas already made their decision.
It's so funny, the difference between Bowlesby and Yormark. Like, it's just polar opposites, where Bowlesby was so boring.
I don't know if they're both the best.
No. Like what you would want is something in the middle.
Right, yeah.
Because Yormark's taken it and just turned it into a circus.
Yes. Going to Vegas for media days is ridiculous.
It's supposed to be 118 degrees.
It's supposed to be like the hottest on record week in Las Vegas history.
And the bulk of your conference is in the middle of the country, and you're 2 hours behind. So, like, this was I don't know if I've said this before or not on a pod, but like, our radio station couldn't go out there because what is it, Alliance or Allegiant Stadium doesn't open up until 11 a.m. our time, so we couldn't even do a morning show. So there's no reason for us to go out there.
I want to know, is there a direct flight from Orlando to Vegas that you can get on if you're UCF?
I bet there is.
I'm sure.
I guarantee there is.
Sure, they're flying private, but I wonder how long that flight is.
It might be on Spirit Airlines, but
that in Morgantown, flying from Morgantown to Vegas.
The real question is, do they have a private jet that can fly that far?
Yeah.
Who?
UCF. Florida?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
They got some
They got some money.
Guys.
Yeah. They got some money down there, too.
Engineers and stuff like that.
You talk about a fast-growing... again, I think there's a world where UCF's one of the few programs that could punch back up into the P5 or P4 at some point. Like their alumni base is massive and just growing.
I think Gus Malzahn's a good coach.
Their average alumni is like 33 or 34. So like they're just getting into money and having real donors and that kind of stuff. They could explode, 20 years from now.
I'm looking at famous alumni from UCF. Cheryl Hines from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm. Who she's married to?
Who is she married to?
He's running for president.
Oh, yeah. The JFK or
RFK.
RFK, yeah. I
He had
forgot.
a dog, supposedly, which, by the way, we can follow up on that at some point.
Daniel Tosh listed as a famous alumni. Terrence Trent Darby, Josh.
Oh, hell yeah. Wishing well.
Yeah, Wishing well back in the day. It's not. Oh. You know who is an alumni of UCF? Jason Street. The actor Scott Porter, who played Jason Street on Friday Night Lights. UCF grad. That's pretty awesome. All right.
And I will say to anyone listening and hasn't seen Friday Night Lights, go watch that. That was really solid television.
I just started watching Yellowstone.
I did too. I haven't made it through the first episode yet.
Neither have I. I'm halfway, but it's good.
Okay, let's get to some recruiting. And I know we got a recruiting report that's going to publish today along with the podcast. But I think most notably, the offensive tackle situation, that seems like even since yesterday, there's a little bit of movement there in terms of, the big ones, the guys that Fasusi, Rogers. I'm trying to think. Did Haywood end up making his decision?
No.
Is he announced yet?
No, he hasn't announced yet.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, Josh, just take it away. Kind of tell us, the latest here.
Sure. We talked about it on the recruiting report yesterday that all roads were kind of pointing toward Lamont Rogers, and then Oklahoma was going to get to wait and see what happened with Michael Fasusi, kind of take the temperature, see what they could make work. I've even, in the last 24 hours, I've even heard some conversations about Oklahoma sitting down with some of the guys in this conversation, Fasusi, Rogers, maybe even Ryan Foje, the current commitment, and kind of saying, this is how we see this working out if you all three were part of the class, and trying to lay out that vision of what this would look like. Now, I haven't sat down and confirmed that with some of these guys, but that is going around the rumor mill, I guess you'd say. But yeah, 24 hours later, like I said, I had all heard everything looked great for Lamont Rogers. I think it was coming down to an Oklahoma and Missouri battle, yada, yada. All of a sudden you wake up this morning and you start hearing Texas is now really, really worried about Michael Fasusi. They really think maybe Oklahoma's pushed out in front there, when I think even as well as I knew that visit went, there was a part of me, and I think I told you, Eddie and George on one of the reports, that it just felt like, man, Texas has been there for so long. It just feels like this is one of those, you gave him something to think about, but at the end of the day, he's going to pick Texas. As you're talking to people, it just sounds like Texas is like, I don't know if we're going to shake this. Like, it just feels like they know Oklahoma really hit it out of the park with his official visit. And he liked Texas. I mean, there's no question about it. He can still pick Texas. But I think Oklahoma put themselves in a position Texas wasn't expecting. And so this morning, how this kind of relates to Lamont Rogers is you started to hear that maybe Texas was pivoting to Lamont Rogers, making him their guy. That's going to be their priority. That's going to be the guy. Because I think that's been the thing for Texas, Oklahoma, and A&M. They all kind of said, you just got to get one of these guys. You got to land one of these three guys in the Dallas area. Well, with Ty Haywood looking like he's going to Alabama and removing himself from that equation, well, now you got to figure some other stuff out. Like, well, what's going to happen here? Where does this go? And again, I still feel really good about Oklahoma landing one of these, one of the three, really not so much Haywood, because like I said, I think that ship's kind of sailed. But whether it's Babalola, whether it's Fasusi, whether it's Rogers, but for Texas A&M, they're really playing Fasusi and Rogers. That's really all they've got in the equation at this point in time. So you're starting to hear some NIL stuff ramping up, some kind of final, what can we make work? What kind of numbers are possible? That kind of stuff. So that's going to be really interesting to follow. Now, at the same time, when I talk to Oklahoma sources and I talk to some other people, it's still all Oklahoma. That's what I'm hearing. Now, again, you never know how news filters out, how, other people pick up information, because it's not like anybody gets to talk to Lamont Rogers 24 hours a day and knows his exact thoughts at every given minute. But I still like where Oklahoma is, but it does seem like Texas is starting to throw a bit of a curveball in this situation, and we're going to have to wait probably 24 hours to kind of see what that really means.
And refresh everybody on when the commitment dates, who has announced one, when they're coming.
Yeah, so that's the other issue, is it's kind of becoming a game of musical chairs where everybody's kind of waiting for the first guy to sit down amongst, like I said, Ty Haywood, Lamont Rogers, Michael Fasusi, and then in Oklahoma's case, Andrew Babalola. So you have Lamont Rogers. He has not announced it, but I have been told he is going to announce on Saturday, July 6th. Same day as Oklahoma will hear from Amarian Robinson, the safety from Arkansas. So that's expected to be the first kind of chip to fall, and then we'll see where things start going. But Michael Fasusi's talking about late July, early August. Ty Haywood really hasn't said anything because he rarely does. And Andrew Babalola, when I talked to him, I think he told me I'm going to take a couple weeks coming out of that Oklahoma official visit on, June 21st. So he should also be getting fairly close if that timeline is something he kind of plans to keep to. So I would expect, if I'm guessing at how this plays out, I would say Rogers goes first, and then some mixture of Haywood and Babalola, and then Fasusi's probably the last one to make his announcement in sometime around the start of fall camp would be my expectation.
Josh, we talked a lot about Rogers and Fasusi, and whether it's on the show or in our DMs and stuff, but what is the deal with Babalola? Like, what's he up to? I mean, I know that a lot of people think Stanford for him, but I mean, is OU still in that race, or is he like a backup plan? Like, I guess where are they at with him?
To be clear, Oklahoma would absolutely take him. I don't know how they would make it work, but if all three wanted to come, I'm sure OU would find a way for Babalola, Rogers, and Fasusi. Now, we know that's not going to happen. 2 is a dream scenario. 3 is just la-la land. That's never going to happen, especially with a guy like Foje already in the class and knowing how highly Oklahoma thinks of Ryan Foje. I mean, that's a guy, I've said it over and over again, I think there's a very real world where he ends up a 5-star. So that's kind of what you're talking about with these guys in this offensive line group. But with Babalola, my impression is this is going to come down to Stanford, Michigan, and Oklahoma. And I think it's a really interesting study, because what does Babalola want? Does he want the academics that we all know Stanford offers and is just incredible? And, like I said, his father's a doctor. So, I mean, he is a guy that does value education. He's not one of these guys who says, oh, yeah, I want a great education, and then goes to, to steal a Bob Stoopsism, East Popcorn University or East Popcorn State. So I think that has to be considered. And then you kind of have Oklahoma, who I think of the 3 is going to be more competitive in NIL, is going to has more NFL track record right now of NFL offensive tackles, and I think has really been heavily involved in his recruitment longer than the other 2. And then you kind of have Michigan that's kind of the middle ground. Great academic school, good offensive line production, Sharon Moore. I mean, there's plenty to like there in Michigan as well. I think it's just a matter of what does he feel like? Does he go to one of the extremes? Does he kind of settle in the middle with Michigan? I could see either case. I know most people out there think it's Stanford. When I talk to sources, I don't know. Like, that's not the read that I get from certain people around Norman. Like, that's just not the impression that I get, that they think it's going to be Stanford. Now, it could be, but like I said, I think there is an expectation that while he wants to have great academics, he knows how far football can take him. He knows he's a special talent, and that he could set his family up for life with what he could make in the NFL and those kind of things. So I don't think it's as cut and dry as, well, oh, he wants to go for to the Stanford to Stanford and get a great education. So there's a lot kind of in play there, and I really could see any of those three answers coming about. I know Auburn hasn't given up. Obviously, Missouri hasn't given up. So there's other contenders, but I would be surprised if it's not one of those three.
It's kind of one of those things, like you got to get one of three. I know that's like, it's almost like a baseball game. Hit 333 and you're going to be all right.
Well, and I think too, and I was saying this before we got on today, but like OU's missed on some guys obviously in the past. And so like for me, it's just like until they actually get one, I'm just not going to believe it. And so then when Josh is also, saying like, they could get two of them, it's like, I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my head around until I see one of those guys like actually commit to OU. And
to a certain extent, it's a lot like what I think Oklahoma fans went through in 2024 with defensive tackle.
Yeah,
like
that's
you
what it
had
feels
to
like.
land a couple and build a little bit of momentum, and maybe they have already. Like maybe we're going to look back. They're going to get one of these three, or maybe even two of the three, and all of a sudden we're going to look back and we go, well, when they got Darius Afalava and they were able to keep Owen Holland back, maybe that should have been a sign that we just were trying to look too deeply into.
I know what George is saying, because I remember, like, guys, when we had, I can't remember if it was the announcement or the recruiting report we did before David Stone or the one immediately afterward, where it was just like, at some point, you're just not going to believe until they do it. Like, until it happens, you just kind of are going to be skeptical. So I get that from George, although I definitely want Crimson Corner members to note George hates Oklahoma in this case. It's not Josh. I'm telling you it's going to happen. Now, I know what the response is going to be from them. It's just Josh setting them up for pain. This will come back on me, and I will get hurt for this. But again, I just, the way everybody is operating, when you watch these things that are happening, it all leads you to believe that a lot of these schools think Oklahoma is in really good shape. Like, they think Oklahoma is going to be tough to beat in a couple of these cases, because again, Texas has made it clear to everyone that Michael Fasusi was their guy. Like, that was the guy they were pouring themselves into. They've made him their priority. They've let everybody know. And I kind of wonder, earlier I said I want to see how Lamont Rogers, what happens and what he feels about Texas kind of stepping up their game. That's what I'm talking about. How is he going to feel about, you've been a secondary option for months, and now, hey, you're the guy, because the guy that well and are very familiar with is probably not coming here anymore, or that we think he's not. So I think that's going to be a really interesting reaction to track from Lamont Rogers, because Oklahoma's just kind of recruited all of them and said, we'd take any of you. We'll take everybody we can get. And I think that is a clear difference. And I think it's, I don't know, maybe bred competition, like something good may come out of that. But yeah, again, you hear things, but what's really interesting is I hear more positivity about Oklahoma's place with Lamont Rogers and Michael Fasusi from outside of Norman than I do inside of Norman. I think inside of Norman feels the same as George. Like, we've been this close to the goal line a lot of times until we hear that kid say Oklahoma at a ceremony with a hat on. We're just not going to trust it.
And maybe even more so when it's announced by the school, because he signed a letter of intent nowadays.
Oh yeah. Guys, I mean, that's the thing. I will tell you flat out, because of the numbers that are being thrown at some of these kids, the commitment's great. It's a great start. Count on nothing until signing day. Like, until early December, these guys are still going to have people coming at them, because there's so much money, there's so much coming at them. And, if Texas A&M goes and, has you could argue either way, a great season, a bad season, whatever. And Mike Elko's like, we need that future left tackle. Okay, the market changes. So that, it's just, that's the scary part for OU fans. You may get the win now and then still have to sweat bullets until December.
It's crazy though, because this is we've talked a lot about how big of a season this is for Bill Beatenbow. I'd argue that this next month and a half of these guys and the recruitment is even bigger, because if you're able to go out and land, one or two of these guys, if the offensive line this season, is not as good as they want it to be, or falters or whatever, or it's just okay like we think it will be, you can fall back on, well, look at the class he's bringing in, because it would be the best offensive line class probably that he's ever had in his tenure at Oklahoma. So it's like, at least on paper, I think that's why it's so interesting, because this next month and a half is, I think, huge for him in terms of perception and also just kind of restocking that room.
Absolutely. Because, I mean, that's, guys, we talk about that, and OU fans are going to hate this comparison, but this is what we saw Texas do for years. When something was bad, they'd say, well, look at this recruiting class that's coming in, and, this is going to solve all our problems. And, of course, we don't know what's going to happen with these guys, but you mix really talented guys and the development we know Bill Bedenbaugh is capable of, that seems like a good recipe. Like, that seems like something that's going to win out over time. So if Oklahoma can just get these guys on campus, then I think you've got a huge start. And, again, with Ryan Foje and Darius Afalava, I really like those two guys. Owen Hollenbeck, that's been a guy that OU identified early on, made him their center target. So if you can just get that one more tackle, and again, I've said it over and over again, I think the class should be 5 if they can all make that work. But either way, just get those guys there, close the deal, and at that point, everybody starts talking about, look at the 2027 season, with Jaden O'Neal as your quarterback and this offensive line in front of him, and all the Jonathan Hatton's your running back. I mean, you start really, you're selling the vision for the future. When, at a point in time that, George, I was listening, I think you talking with Michael Bratton, and it was the same idea. Like, are they ready to compete right now for an SEC and national title? Probably not. But in 2 or 3 years, if they can put those kind of pieces on the table, then you start really having that conversation.
All right. As I said, recruiting report's going to be coming out today. A lot more information as well. But man, it's just been a busy few weeks, really, ever since camps were on. And now we go into the talking season. SEC Media Day is coming up. It's going to be on the, I believe OU goes on the 16th.
OU goes on the 16th, Tuesday.
And we'll all be down there for that. So looking forward to that. And, we'll have the content still going, but 4th of July coming up, we're all going to disappear a little bit. You'll still see content flowing on the site. But I hope you guys have a non-JPP 4th of July, as Eddie said earlier. I don't know how big that firecracker had to be. That it had to be like a mini bomb. And what are you doing lighting one of those in your hands? Like something like a black cat or something, not really capable of blowing off a finger.
I will procure the fireworks, but I usually don't do the setting off.
Just don't put them all in one place where like a lit one can hit them.
I don't know. Or do it. If we don't like you, do it. Try it.
Just not next to your car. There's that one video of that guy that has the whole fireworks sitting next to his car.
Or put it in reverse, Terry.
That's a great clip. It's a great clip.
We probably should have led with that today. All right. Well, I appreciate it, Josh. We will be talking to you soon. Appreciate everybody for listening. Appreciate everybody for coming by this week that was in town. And
even Elisa, who thought we were a tattoo parlor.
Apparently so. We give off that vibe. We might have to do some redecorating. Anyway, thanks to everybody for listening. We'll be back again next week for another edition of the Unofficial 40 podcast right here on SoonerScoop.com.